Tonight, as every sound seems to sink into stillness and only the breath of darkness remains, I ask you to walk with me toward a door. Not a door of wood or stone, but one woven of memory, of whispers. It stands at the threshold between now and then, between what we know and what has always been hidden. And behind it lies a prophecy, fragile, forbidden, carried through centuries like a smoldering ember. They call it the prophecy of Hermes. But what if that prophecy is true? What if it is not myth, but mirror, showing us the fate of humankind? Hermes, in the memory of the Greeks, was a trickster, quick and cunning. He stole, he lied, he laughed, messenger of the gods with winged sandals at his feet. Yet beneath that playful mask was something heavier. He was the opener of doors, the guide of souls, the one who could pass through the threshold of death without resistance. He carried messages between heaven and earth, and for that reason, some believed he had glimpsed the end of worlds. The Egyptians knew him differently. They called him Thoth, with the face of an ibis, holding the reed and tablet of writing. He was not the thief of fire, but the recorder of time, the measurer of souls, the keeper of truth's feather. And when these two images met in the city of Alexandria, Hermes, the messenger, Thoth, the scribe, they merged into one. Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great. It was through him that whispers of a forbidden prophecy began to flow. In brittle scrolls, faint words emerged. They did not describe the world as it was, but as it would wither. Hermes wrote of forgetting the stars as voices, forgetting the wind as message, forgetting the sacred flame hidden in one's own heart. When men forgot, the world itself would dry up like a desert without oasis. Can you hear it? The sound of sand pouring through temple doors, smothering altars, the swell of silence in empty halls where once prayer and fire lived. This is the vision Hermes saw, a long fading, slow as fog, wrapping itself around human souls until no one remembered they had once walked with gods. And yet, even as he spoke of sorrow, Hermes planted a seed of hope. For even in the desert of forgetting, he whispered of hidden springs. A few would remember. A few would guard the ember in the dark, carrying it through centuries until the world longed for light again. Tonight, as I speak to you, we too become keepers of that flame. Every word you hear, every image you hold, is a spark added to the fire. You may wonder what is the use of a story whispered in the dark. But imagine, if no one remembered, if no one told, the ember would vanish, and with it the memory of the sacred. That is why fragile scrolls survived fire, war, and dust, because someone always held them, even in silence. They passed from hand to hand, hidden but alive. And now, when we speak of them, we also join that ritual. Hermes did not shout his prophecy. He wrapped it in symbols, in silence, in fragility. To hear him, we must slow our breath, walk softly as if across the stones of an abandoned sanctuary. So I invite you move gently through these words. Let them drip like water into a deep well. Let them soak into your heart as if they have been waiting for you. For if we keep listening, the prophecy itself still breathes. And if a story can keep the ember alive, then a single small gesture can feed it further. One touch, one choice, is like laying another branch on the fire. Keep it alive, so the night is not empty, but lit by a faint glow waiting to rise brighter. So I ask you, if this flame trembles in our hands tonight, will you place it in another's hands, so that it may pass through the night, through centuries, through the very fog of forgetting? Symbols always follow Hermes like shadows. He rarely spoke in straight lines. Instead, he scattered signs along the roads, left tokens on stones, carved faces on pillars, each one both guide and riddle. To the ordinary traveler, these were nothing more than boundary markers, columns planted at crossroads. They called them simple blocks of stone, often with his face etched upon them, sometimes with inscriptions, half erased by time. But to those who watched closely, to those who paused and breathed at the edge of the path, the Herm was more than a stone. It was a door. A Herm stood not merely to mark a road, but to remind the walker that they were stepping into sacred ground. The Greeks whispered that Hermes placed secret signs upon them, small marks only the attentive could read. Some said the arrangement of lines, the tilt of a carved face, the angle of a word, each detail was a language folded upon itself. And so the traveler who read rightly might not only know which way to turn, but glimpse something greater, the hidden hand of the divine pointing forward. The Egyptians, too, lived in a world thick with symbols. Their language itself was symbol. A bird, a reed, a star carved into stone were never only pictures. They were gateways, each sign more than itself, each hieroglyph a bridge between the seen and unseen. To write was to summon, not to describe. To carve was to bind reality, not just record it. And Thoth, Hermes' other face, was master of this sacred act. With his ibis head bowed over the tablet, he wrote not only names but fates, weighing truth and falsehood as carefully as one measures stars. Imagine walking through the halls of Karnak or Luxor, where walls are covered in such writing. Every figure holds double meaning, every curve of the chisel another layer of the world. The silence is heavy, but it is not emptiness, is the pause of the gods waiting for someone to read. Thoth dwelled here, hidden in the folds of these images, teaching that wisdom was never handed plain, but concealed in symbol. Hermes and Thoth together wove a universe where signs were more real than words. And so the prophecy, when it came, did not thunder from the sky. It was hidden in marks, folded into glyphs, whispered at crossroads where stones bore faces that watched. It asked seekers not to listen with ears, but with eyes, with patience, with the intuition that sees beyond surface. The world of Hermes was not a world of lectures. It was a labyrinth of symbols, each turn leading deeper into mystery. A serpent curled upon itself, biting its tail, taught eternity. A staff twined with serpents whispered of healing and duality. A triangle carved upward signaled fire, downward water. To the untrained, they were scratches, ornaments. To the seeker, they were the alphabet of the soul. And in this alphabet, prophecy was written, not loud, not plain, but hidden in folds. Truth was never handed directly. Hermes knew that if spoken too clearly, it would be mocked, misused, lost. So he buried it in symbols, where only the patient would find it. A truth hidden is a truth protected, waiting for the right moment, the right eyes. Do you see the pattern? Hermes did not divide the world into sacred and ordinary. To him, every road was a temple, every stone a page, every symbol a prayer disguised. The Hermes in the fields of Greece and the hieroglyphs in the halls of Egypt were not separate, they were threads of one tapestry, stretched across lands, and in their union lay the prophecy. A prophecy woven from signs cannot die easily. A book may burn, but a carved symbol endures. A library may vanish, but a pillar at a crossroads still waits in silence. Hermes understood this. That is why his wisdom lived in symbols. To carry a word is fragile. To carry a sign is to bury it deep into stone, into ritual, into the very breath of language. So the prophecy begins not with sentences, but with signs. A stone by the road, a bird on a wall, a triangle, a serpent, a flame. The seeker who sees them all as one begins to understand what Hermes tried to say. That truth does not come in plain speech. It comes wrapped, hidden, folded, like a secret kept safe from careless hands. And if this is true, then perhaps the prophecy itself is all around us even now. Perhaps it lies in the patterns of the stars overhead, in the echo of wind against ruined walls, in the rhythm of footsteps at a crossroad. Perhaps every silence holds a letter, every dawn a phrase, every ruin a reminder that wisdom is never lost but concealed. Symbols are doors. And Hermes, the threshold walker, taught us that doors always lead somewhere. Some to silence, some to light. The question is whether we will recognize them when we stand before them. So I ask you, as you walk through your own crossroads, will you see only stone, only dust, only chance marks? Or will you see a sign left for you, a whisper folded into the world, waiting to be read? Somewhere in the dust of forgotten shelves, in libraries that no longer breathe, there were whispers of a scroll. It was said to carry words not of triumph, but of sorrow, not of beginnings, but of endings. This was where the prophecy began. Fragile lines written in ink that had nearly faded, warnings carved not into stone, but into the silence of time itself. Hermes, or perhaps Thoth, or perhaps both as one, had written of decline, of a world slipping away from the sacred, step by step, until the last ember was nearly gone. The scrolls spoke of temples falling quiet. Once they rang with chants, fire burning on altars, offerings rising into the night air. But Hermes saw another day when those temples would stand cold. Pillars still tall but hollow, stones still proud but lifeless. The silence would not come suddenly, but like twilight fading into night, slow, unnoticed, until the stars appeared and the sacred was gone. The prophecy did not scream destruction, it whispered abandonment, a gentle but terrifying drift into forgetting. And worse than silence, Hermes wrote, would be mockery. What once was revered would be laughed at. The sacred would be treated as foolishness, the seekers called madmen, the priests ridiculed as dreamers. In this turning of values, darkness would wear the mask of light. What was empty would be praised as wisdom, while truth would be discarded as superstition. To Hermes, this was a blindness more dangerous than violence, for when forgetting feels like progress, who dares resist it? He described the world as a desert, not only a desert of sand, though he must have seen those endless dunes in Egypt. This was a desert of memory, a desert where men wandered, eyes open but unseeing, ears open but unhearing, a thirst that no water could quench. Sacredness treated as void, and void treated as sacred. A place where the soul stumbled, longing for springs that no longer flowed. But Hermes was not cruel. Even in this desert, he placed a mystery. Hidden oases, small springs of memory, fragments of truth that would survive the long forgetting. Though most of the world would laugh, mock, and move on, a few would remember. They would keep the flame, guard the whisper, hold the ember. Not enough to end the desert, but enough to ensure it would one day bloom again. The prophecy carried sorrow like a heavy cloak, yet beneath it was sewn threads of hope. He did not only say that the temples would crumble, he said ruins could still hold memory, broken stones could still whisper. Silence itself could still carry the echo of chants long past. In this way, the prophecy was not final doom, but a rhythm, decline, silence, renewal. It was as though Hermes wanted us to know despair only so we could feel the promise hidden within it. Imagine standing inside a temple long abandoned, dust drifting through beams of sunlight, altars cold, walls cracked. To most, it is only ruin. But to Hermes, this was a page in his prophecy. The ruin itself was a sign, a reminder that even in silence, the divine was near, waiting. The emptiness was not death, but pause. Not absence, but preparation. A breath drawn in before the next song. And yet Hermes' words carried grief. He wrote as if he already felt the shadow of forgetting stretching backward from the future into his present. His voice was not only warning, it was mourning. He knew that faith would not only weaken, but would be forgotten, mocked, treated as dust. He felt the sorrow of gods fading from memory, of humans wandering without meaning, of stars seen as lights only, not voices. But perhaps, hidden in that sorrow, was his truest gift. For if forgetting is inevitable, then remembering is also inevitable. If temples fall silent, then silence too can awaken. If the desert spreads, then the oasis becomes more precious. Hermes' prophecy did not leave us only with despair. It left us with the reminder that what is lost may be found, that what is forgotten may be remembered, and that even when the heavens close, they can open again. So let us hold this image: a desert stretching endlessly, dunes swallowing all paths, the sun beating down. And yet, somewhere beneath the sand, water flows unseen. Somewhere, in the heart of a wanderer, a flame still glows. The prophecy may speak of decline, but in every decline lies the seed of return. Hermes knew we would walk through such deserts. He knew faith would falter, and silence would grow. But he also knew that seekers would remain. Seekers like you, like me, like anyone who pauses long enough to wonder if the world still whispers, and in that wandering, the ember lives. So I ask you, when the desert of forgetting surrounds us, when laughter drowns out reverence, when temples fall to dust, will you still search for the hidden oasis? Will you still bend down to drink from the spring of memory, even if the world calls you foolish? There comes a moment in the prophecy when sorrow grows so deep that even the sky itself seems to dim. Hermes spoke of it as if he had seen it unfold before his very eyes. The silence of the gods, not the silence of sleep, not the silence of rest, but the silence of withdrawal. The heavens, once open like a vast gate, would close. The voices that once spoke in dreams, in signs, in whispers of wind and flame, would fall still. The world would continue. Rivers would flow. Crops would grow. Children would laugh. Yet something unseen would vanish. The divine breath that once moved through everything would fade into absence. People would look up at the stars and see only light, not language. They would stand at the edge of the sea and hear only waves, not messages. They would live as if the sacred had never been real at all. This, Hermes feared most of all, not destruction, but indifference. Not fire consuming temples, but silence hollowing them out. For in his vision, it was not violence that ended devotion. It was neglect. The forgetting crept slowly until no one remembered why the altar had been built, why the grove was once sacred, why the stone had been raised. Trees would be cut down, shrines abandoned, sacred springs left to dry. Animals would wander through deserted sanctuaries, grass rising between fallen stones. The gods did not vanish in anger, they withdrew in sorrow, for they could not remain where they were no longer welcomed. Hermes described this silence as a mirror. The heavens did not change, the people did. The stars still shone, but eyes had forgotten how to read them. The winds still carried voices, but ears had grown deaf. The divine still waited, but hearts no longer sought. And so the gods turned their faces away, not forever, but until remembrance stirred again. The prophecy painted this silence not as a sudden end, but as a slow shadow. It crept from altar to city, from heart to heart. Sacredness dissolved, not with thunder, but with laughter, with shrugs, with the gentle erosion of meaning. The greatest danger, Hermes warned, was not denial, but forgetting. For when people no longer remembered what had been sacred, the world became smaller, emptier, lonelier. Imagine walking through a temple once alive with prayer. Now the columns rise like bones against the sky. No incense, no chants, only the echo of your footsteps. The silence is so heavy it feels alive, pressing against your chest, reminding you that something is missing. This was Hermes's vision, the silence of temples as the silence of the universe itself. Without devotion, the bond between heaven and earth would break, leaving both wounded. Hermes knew that when faith fades, mockery often follows. Those who still believed would be ridiculed, their voices dismissed as madness, their devotion seen as folly. Wisdom itself would be called foolishness. In this reversal, light would be named darkness, and darkness would wear the mask of light. Such confusion, he feared, would not only silence the gods, but poison the heart of man. And yet, even as he mourned this silence, Hermes hinted at renewal. The silence of the gods was not forever. It was waiting. Waiting for hearts to remember, for seekers to rise, for the ember of faith to glow again. Just as night waits for dawn, so too would silence wait for song. The heavens might close like a gate, but a gate can open. This is the paradox of Hermes's prophecy. He showed us despair so we might long for hope. He led us into silence so we might yearn for song. He revealed the gods turning away so we might turn back to them. For silence, in his vision, was not the end but the threshold, the pause before renewal. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine it. The sky above you, stars scattered like countless eyes. But they no longer speak, they no longer guide. You feel small, abandoned. Yet deep within, you sense a spark. The spark tells you, silence is not emptiness, it is waiting. The gods are not gone, they are near, watching, holding their breath until you remember. This is the heart of the prophecy, that even in silence, the sacred is not lost. It is hidden, waiting for the world to be ready to listen again. Hermes warned us, but he also reassured us. Silence is never endless. Beyond the closed gate, dawn prepares to rise. So let us ask ourselves, here in the stillness, when the heavens close, when the gods withdraw, when silence presses heavy on the soul, will we despair? Or will we listen more closely? Will we see only absence? Or will we sense the presence waiting beyond the veil? After silence, Hermes promised, comes dawn. Not the sudden blaze of midday, not the roar of fire consuming the night, but the slow, patient return of light. The prophecy told of a world where sacred voices would vanish, where temples would crumble into dust, and where memory would seem lost forever. Yet Hermes whispered that this darkness was not final, for just as night leans into morning, so too would the age of forgetting give way to remembrance. He spoke of dawn not as a miracle from above, but as a flame rekindled within. Renewal would not begin with stone rebuilt, but with spirit reborn. The true temples, Hermes said, were never only of marble and granite. They were the hearts of men and women who remembered. Long after altars cracked and chants fell silent, the ember within the human soul would remain. And when the world was ready, that ember would stir, glowing brighter, until it became a flame once more. This dawn was not loud. It was not announced with trumpets or thunder. It arrived like a whisper in dreams, like the first pale light at the horizon, like the quiet shift of color in the sky before sunrise. Seekers would begin to hear again. They would look to the stars and see not mere dots of light, but signs. They would walk by rivers and hear not only water, but song. They would stand before ruins and feel not emptiness, but presence. Hermes described this return as the lifting of dust from memory. Forgotten words would rise again. Sacred names once mocked would be spoken with reverence. What had been laughed at as folly would reveal itself as wisdom. The world, once dry as desert, would bloom like spring. Yet this renewal would not be a return to the past. The temples of stone might remain in ruins, but the temples of the heart would awaken stronger than before. Imagine walking through a field at dawn. The ruins of a sanctuary lie around you, fallen columns, cracked altars, weeds sprouting through ancient steps. Yet the air feels different. The silence that once pressed heavy now carries a softness, as if it is breathing again. A bird sings, faint but clear. A ray of light touches the stone. In that moment, you know the temple is not dead. It is alive in you, in your memory, in your breath. This is the dawn Hermes promised. He did not say it would come quickly. Renewal is not lightning, but sunrise. First a hint of color, then a faint glow, then the full face of the sun. So too would the divine return, not all at once, but gradually, as people remembered, as seekers gathered, as hearts opened. The prophecy told us that the divine never vanishes. It only hides, waiting for the right time to shine again. And in this, Hermes gave us hope. He told us that no silence is eternal, that every shadow is only a passage. Darkness, no matter how deep, carries within it the seed of light. The forgotten can be remembered, the broken rebuilt, the silent made to sing again. Even as the heavens close, dawn waits on the other side of the gate. But this dawn asks something of us. It was not a gift handed freely, it was a response. A response to those who chose to remember, who kept the ember alive, who tended the inner flame when the world turned away. Hermes reminded us that the divine does not abandon humanity. It waits for humanity to seek it again. When we remember, the heavens answer. When we open, the gods return. So let us carry this image. Dawn after endless night. A sky that has been silent for centuries begins to glow. Not loudly, not suddenly, but tenderly, as if reminding us that light was never gone, only hidden. And within us too, something stirs. A memory, a longing, a whisper. The sacred is still here. This is the promise woven into the prophecy, that beyond silence lies song, beyond ruin lies renewal, beyond forgetting lies remembrance, and beyond night always lies dawn. So I ask you, when the world feels cold and silent, when the temples of your life seem empty, will you trust that dawn still waits? Will you keep the ember alive, even when the horizon looks dark? For perhaps the light we long for is already stirring, quiet, patient, inevitably, as the prophecy of Hermes told us long ago. As above, so below. These 4 words, simple yet bottomless, were said to be among Hermes's most enduring teachings. They are not merely a phrase, but a doorway, an axis around which the prophecy itself begins to turn. To hear them is to realize that what unfolds in the heavens is mirrored on the earth, and what breathes within the human heart echoes in the vastness of the stars. Hermes spoke in symbols, not in doctrines. He knew that truth to clear would be dismissed, misused, or mocked. So he wrapped it, concealed it, carried it in signs that only seekers would unfold. A circle, endless and unbroken, whispered of eternity. A serpent devouring its own tail reminded us that every ending is also a beginning. Triangles pointing upward spoke of fire, aspiration, and a divine spark that climbs. Triangles pointing downward spoke of water, surrender, and the fertile ground where seeds take root. Together they formed not geometry but a language, the alphabet of the soul. To those who trained their sight, these were not abstractions. They were keys. A key to the body, a key to the cosmos, a key to prophecy itself. As above, so below, meant that the fall of temples mirrored the fading of stars in our perception. It meant that the silence of the heavens reflected the silence in our own hearts. The outer and the inner were never separate. They were two faces of the same mystery. Hermes called this the great work knot, the changing of metals into gold, as some later alchemists imagined, but the transformation of the self into light. Alchemy was life itself, ignorance transmuted into wisdom, despair into hope, shadow into radiance. The crucible was not in a laboratory but in the heart. The furnace was not of fire and bellows, but of suffering and time. And the gold that emerged was not treasure, but the soul awakened. Imagine for a moment a seeker sitting alone in the dim chamber of a ruined temple. Around him, symbols etched in stone, triangles, spirals, serpents mute to untrained eyes. He runs his fingers over the lines, feels the grooves, closes his eyes. Slowly, the silence becomes language. The shapes begin to speak, not in words, but in recognition. This ruin outside reflects the ruin within. This serpent, swallowing itself, reflects the cycles of his own life. He realizes that Hermes was never speaking of stones or stars alone. He was speaking of him. This is the teaching hidden within prophecy, that decline and silence are not only cosmic events, but inner states. When humanity forgets the divine, it is because individuals have forgotten their own inner flame. When temples fall, it is because the temples of the heart have been neglected. And so the promise of dawn is also a promise to each of us, to rediscover, to renew, to transform. Hermes insisted that truth could not be spoken plainly, because truth is not a thing to be given, it is a path to be walked. Symbols protect wisdom. They ensure it is only found by those who are ready. The serpent, the staff, the circle, the flame, each is a veil and an invitation. To the careless, they are meaningless marks. To the seeker, they are doors. And every door is a threshold to transformation. The prophecy of Hermes was never about doom alone. It was also about awakening. It whispered that though silence would come, those who tended the inner fire would keep the world alive. The task was not to rebuild altars of stone, but to polish the altar within until it shone. As above, so below means that the return of light is not only a cosmic event, but an inner one. The heavens will open again because hearts will open again. So let us remember the symbols. The serpent teaches that endings feed beginnings. The triangle reminds us that ascent and descent are woven together. The circle whispers that nothing sacred can ever truly be lost. These are not riddles to solve, but companions to walk with, shaping how we see the world. And in walking with them, we begin to understand Hermes as deeper vision, that prophecy is not a prediction of what must be, but a mirror showing us what already lives within. When we forget, the world falls silent. When we remember, the dawn returns. The gods do not vanish. They wait for us to align above and below, to become once more what we were meant to be, reflections of the divine. So I ask you, when you see a symbol carved in stone, or drawn in sand, or hidden in a dream, will you pass it by as decoration? Or will you pause, touch it, and wonder if it is Hermes himself, whispering again, inviting you to step through another door. Time, Hermes said, is the greatest alchemist of all. Where men saw only years slipping like sand, he saw a furnace, glowing and patient, in which everything was tested and transformed. Kingdoms rose and fell, temples burned and crumbled, rivers shifted, stars wheeled overhead, off it part of the great work of time. Nothing was wasted, nothing was final. Every sorrow, every silence, every ruin was placed into the crucible, to be refined, to be remade. The prophecy whispered that decline was never the end. Just as metals must melt before they are purified, so too must civilizations pass through darkness before light can return. To Hermes, pain was not punishment but process. Destruction was not annihilation but transformation. Even forgetting had its place, for only when memory was lost could remembrance be reborn with greater depth. The world was not a straight line moving toward doom, but a wheel turning, season after season, night into day, winter into spring. Imagine an ancient smith hammering in the glow of his forge. The fire roars, the metal softens, sparks leap. Every strike seems violent, yet each one shapes the iron into something stronger. So too does time strike us, heating, pressing, breaking. And so too does it shape us, tempering the soul until it shines like gold. Hermes believed this was the hidden meaning of alchemy, not the transmutation of lead into metal, but of man into light. The prophecy spoke of this rhythm. Civilizations, he said, are like men. They are born, they grow, they wither, and they die. But their death is not the end. It is the soil for what comes next. Ruins are not failures, but stepping stones. The silence of one age becomes the seedbed for the song of another. Nothing sacred is ever truly lost. It is carried forward, reshaped, hidden in another form, waiting for eyes ready to see it. This is why Hermes did not fear opposites. He knew that light and darkness are partners, not enemies. Without shadow, light has no depth. Without night, dawn has no meaning. Fire and water, joy and sorrow, life and death, danced together in the alchemy of time. His prophecy told us not to despair when one overtook the other, for their dance was eternal. Even silence was part of the music. Think of the river. It carries away what is old, sweeping ruins into its current. But it also brings new soil, new life, shaping fresh lands downstream. So too does time. It takes, but it also gives. It erases, but it also renews. Empires crumble into the current, but wisdom flows on, never destroyed, only reshaped. To Hermes, this was comfort. The river may seem cruel, but it is also kind, for it ensures that nothing stagnates, nothing rots, nothing lingers forever. The prophecy, then, was less a warning than a reminder. Decline is part of the rhythm. Silence is part of the song. Forgetting is part of remembering. To see this is to no longer fear time, but to trust it. For time is not only a destroyer, it is a healer. The furnace that burns also refines. The river that erodes also nourishes. Hermes urged us to see ourselves within this rhythm. Our lives, too, are alchemy. Suffering, loss, doubt are fires that strip away impurity, leaving the soul brighter. What seems like failure is transformation. What seems like ending is beginning. In this way, the prophecy was not only about civilizations, but about every individual who walks beneath the stars. Each life, each heart, is part of the great work of time. And so, Hermes asked us a question. How will we see time? As an enemy stealing our days, carrying away our temples, erasing our names, or as a guide, refining us, polishing us, carrying us toward renewal? The answer, he said, shapes everything. Those who fear time cling desperately to what is fading. Those who trust it walk forward, knowing that renewal waits. Picture the ruins of an ancient city, its stones broken, its walls covered in vines. To most, it is only loss, but to Hermes, it is a lesson. These ruins are not graves, they are seeds. They teach us that nothing stands forever, and nothing sacred truly dies. They remind us that even destruction has meaning, that even silence carries hope. Time, then, is the great alchemist. It turns ashes into fire, silence into song, despair into dawn. It teaches us that prophecy is not fixed fate but rhythm, that endings are always thresholds. To walk with Hermes is to see time not as a cruel hand but as the hidden goldsmith, shaping all things into what they are meant to be. So I ask you, when time strikes its hammer upon your life, when silence presses close, when what you love crumbles, will you see only loss, or will you trust that you too are being refined? Will you resist the fire, or will you allow it to shape you into light? The prophecy of Hermes did not end with silence or even with dawn. It stretched forward like a hidden thread, weaving through centuries, carried by those who refused to let it die. His words, fragile as breath, survived not because they were loud, but because they were guarded in shadows. Monks, scribes, mystics, and alchemists each, in their own age, took the ember of his teaching and sheltered it, passing it from hand to hand, generation to generation. This is what we might call the esoteric heritage, the underground river that never ceased to flow. When libraries burned, when cities fell, when conquerors erased names and histories, Hermes's whispers did not vanish, they hid. In monasteries tucked in remote valleys, monks copied fragments of the Hermetic texts by candlelight, their ink strokes careful, reverent, as though they feared the page itself might disappear. They did not always understand what they wrote, but they felt its weight, the quiet gravity of a voice older than their time. And so the words endured, waiting. In the medieval world, alchemists found him again. To them, Hermes was master and guide, his sayings the keys to the great work. They read as above, so below, not as poetry but as instruction. Every attempt to turn lead into gold mirrored the deeper task of transmuting the soul into light. Their furnaces were not only laboratories but altars. Their experiments, however strange, were prayers disguised as fire and smoke. Even in failure, they believed Hermes was speaking, teaching that every misstep was another part of transformation. Secret societies, too, whispered his name. In candlelit chambers, initiates gathered to meditate on his symbols, chanting words passed from teacher to disciple. They treated his writings not as history, but as living fire. Each symbol, each phrase, each silence was studied as if it contained a universe. To belong to such a circle was not to own knowledge, but to walk the path Hermes had opened, the path of remembering, of seeking, of tending the flame. Through all of this, Hermes's voice remained elusive. He was never fully present, never entirely clear. His prophecy was always layered, hidden behind veils of metaphor and code. Some called him a prophet, others a magician, still others a philosopher. Each age reshaped him in its own image. Yet beneath every mask was the same current, the warning of silence, the promise of renewal, the teaching that the divine is never absent, only hidden. This is the power of esoteric heritage. Truth does not survive by being shouted in the marketplace. It survives by being whispered, protected, carried quietly through centuries until the world is ready to hear it again. And Hermes, the threshold walker, seemed to know this. His prophecy lived not in grand monuments, but in fragile manuscripts, not in public ritual, but in hidden gatherings. He trusted time itself to guard his words, just as he trusted the few to remember for the many. Think of it this way. Wisdom is a flame. In a storm, you do not leave it exposed. You cup your hands around it, shield it, pass it carefully to another. So too did Hermes's followers. Each one became a keeper of the flame, ensuring that when the storm passed, the fire would still burn. That is why his teachings are here with us now. Not because they were unbreakable, but because someone, somewhere, kept holding them. And what does this mean for us? That the prophecy is not only history, it is alive. Every time someone remembers, speaks, or listens, the flame flares again. Every time a symbol is drawn, every time a phrase, like as above, so below, is whispered, Hermes' presence stirs. His legacy is not locked in the past. It breathes in the present, moving quietly beneath the noise of the world. Imagine standing in a vaulted library, rows of books stretching into shadows. Dust rises as you pull a volume from the shelf. The pages are brittle, the letters faded. Yet as you read, you feel the weight of centuries. You are not the first to hold this book. Others before you have read it, copied it, preserved it, whispered it. Their breath lingers between the lines, their devotion carried forward so you could hold it now. This is Hermes' gift, a river of memory flowing beneath time, invisible but alive. His prophecy, then, is not finished. It continues wherever it is remembered, wherever the flame is passed. And in this way, you and I, here in this moment, are also part of the heritage. By listening, by carrying even one image forward, we join the chain. We become keepers of the ember. So let us pause and feel this. Hermes' words have survived wars, fires, and forgetting. They were carried through deserts of silence and nights of mockery. And yet they arrive here, still burning, fragile but alive. The question now is not whether his prophecy is true. It is whether we will keep it alive. So I ask you, will you let the ember fade, lost again in the noise of the world? Or will you guard it, carry it, pass it on, so that the underground river of memory continues to flow, and the prophecy of Hermes is never silenced? The prophecy of Hermes was not only a mirror of ancient days, it was a mirror held up to us, here and now. He spoke of forgetting, of silence, of temples turned to dust. And though his words were written centuries ago, they tremble with relevance in our own time. For the world still forgets, the sacred still fades, and meaning, more often than not, slips through our fingers like sand. Hermes warned that forgetting is not simply the loss of memory, it is the loss of meaning. When the sacred is forgotten, rivers become only water, stars only points of light, the soul only flesh. Life shrinks, wonder drains away. The world, once vast and alive, becomes flat, mechanical, and cold. And when that happens, we do not only lose gods, we lose ourselves. For what are we without mystery? Without the sense that there is more? Without the recognition that the flame within us belongs to the same fire that moves the stars? Look around, and perhaps you will feel the echo of Hermes' words. Temples today may not be carved in marble or granite, but they still crumble. Not always in stone, but in spirit. The sacred stories that once carried generations are often set aside as myths to be forgotten. The rituals that once tied humanity to the divine are dismissed as foolish relics. Faith itself, Hermes foresaw, would not be torn away by force, but dissolved slowly unnoticed, until people lived as though the sacred had never been real. And yet, he also knew that silence is not final, that renewal is possible. His prophecy does not only condemn, it invites. It asks us, will we remember? Will we keep the flame alive? Will we allow the ember to smolder until the world is ready for dawn? In this, Hermes' words become more than ancient echoes. They become a call for each of us to take part in the great work, to become keepers of memory, not priests bound by temples, not scribes hidden in cloisters, but simple seekers who carry the flame forward in small, ordinary ways. To remember is itself a sacred act. To tell the story again is to push back against forgetting. To see the stars not only as cold lights, but as whispers is to reopen the heavens, even if only by a crack. This is why the prophecy survives, because each generation, no matter how blind, has always had a few who remembered, a few who refused to let silence win, and now the flame is offered to us. Will we hold it? Will we share it? Will we protect it until others are ready to see again? Imagine yourself holding a candle in the dark. Around you, silence presses close, vast and endless. Yet in your hand, a small light flickers. It does not banish the dark, but it keeps it from swallowing everything. That candle is memory. That candle is meaning. That candle is the prophecy alive within you. And if you pass it to another, the dark recedes a little more. Each voice that joins, each act of remembrance adds another flame to the fire. So when I ask you to keep the story alive, I am not asking for much, only a small gesture, a whisper shared, a flame passed, a reminder given, to subscribe, to like, to share. These are not empty acts. They are part of the ritual, part of the work of remembrance. Each one is a sign that the flame has not gone out, that the prophecy still burns in the hearts of seekers. Hermes' vision was always more than warning. It was invitation. He showed us decline so that we might long for renewal. He showed us silence so that we might hunger for song. He showed us the gods turning away so that we might turn back. In this way, prophecy is not fixed fate, but choice. It is a mirror we hold, deciding whether to look away or to see ourselves within it. And so, as we stand before this mirror, let us ask, what do we see? Do we see a world empty of wonder, or a world waiting to be remembered? Do we see silence as abandonment, or silence as pause? Do we see ourselves as wanderers lost in the desert, or as keepers of hidden oases? The answer does not belong to Hermes, it belongs to us. The prophecy, fragile as it is, has reached us because others before us chose to keep it. Now the question is whether we will do the same, whether we will cup our hands around the ember and carry it forward, whether we will trust that even in the deepest night, dawn waits. So I ask you, softly, as Hermes might, will you help keep the flame alive? Will you remember when others forget? Will you pass the story on so that when the world is ready, the heavens may open again? The desert of forgetting, Hermes said, is never without its guardians. Even when silence spreads, even when laughter mocks the sacred, there are always a few who remember. They walk quietly, unnoticed, carrying water hidden beneath their cloaks. They are the keepers of oases, places where wisdom survives in fragments, small springs under the sand. Without them, the prophecy might have vanished altogether, but with them, it continued, flickering, fragile, yet alive. Imagine a time when the sacred was ridiculed, when temples were abandoned and prayers forgotten. Amid the ruin, someone sits in the corner of a crumbling sanctuary, reciting words only to themselves. They know others will laugh, but still they whisper. That whisper is a spring in the desert. Another walks the roads with a scrap of parchment tucked into their robe, ink faded, words nearly gone. They do not know if anyone else will ever read it, but they carry it still. That parchment is another spring. Hermes hinted at these guardians when he spoke of hidden oases. Though the world would seem dry and faith would vanish, some would keep memory alive, not loudly, not publicly, quietly, humbly, in the shadows. These were not kings or generals, not priests commanding vast temples, but ordinary seekers. Their power was not in numbers, but in endurance. They remembered when others forgot. They kept the ember glowing when the world believed the fire was gone. The prophecy told us that in every age of decline, these guardians would appear. They were not chosen by birth or rank, but by hunger, by longing, by refusal to accept that silence was the final word. To carry memory is to thirst, and only those who thirst deeply enough can find the hidden spring. Think of the monks who sat in cold cells, copying manuscripts line by line, while the world outside plunged into chaos. Think of mystics who lit candles in secret rooms, chanting names long abandoned, their voices trembling but steady. Think of wanderers who carried symbols carved into wood, not knowing if anyone else understood, but unwilling to let them be lost. These were the guardians, quiet, invisible, essential. Hermes's vision of the desert was not meant to terrify, but to remind us that even in the driest wasteland, life hides. Beneath the sand, seeds sleep. Beneath silence, memory waits. The guardians are the ones who water those seeds, who keep them alive until the rains return. Without them, there would be no renewal. With them, the promise of dawn remains. This is why the prophecy matters to us now, because we too walk through deserts. Our temples may not be made of stone, but they crumble just the same. Our sacred stories may not be carved into walls, but they are forgotten just as easily. We too risk losing the sense that life is more than matter, that stars are more than dots, that the soul is more than flesh. And yet, even here, guardians appear. In each generation, in each silence, there are always those who remember. Perhaps you are one. Perhaps even listening now, even wondering now, makes you part of that lineage. To pause and consider, to let the story enter, is already to keep the ember alive. You do not need to build a temple or write a book. To remember is enough. To whisper when the world laughs is enough. To carry the ember quietly, patiently, waiting for the time when the desert blooms again, that is enough. In Hermes's desert, oases were never large. They were small, hidden, sometimes overlooked, but they were enough to keep life alive. So too are the oases of memory in our lives. A story told, a symbol carried, a silence held with reverence. These small acts matter. They are springs hidden under sand, sustaining us until rain comes. The prophecy, then, is not only about decline. It is also about the guardians who rise in every silence. Without them, the gods would be forgotten completely. With them, even in exile, the divine lingers. Hermes himself was such a guardian, carrying the wisdom of both Greece and Egypt, merging them so they would not be lost. His prophecy reminds us that the work is never done. Every age must choose whether to forget or to remember, whether to let the desert spread or to tend the hidden springs. So let us look again at ourselves. The desert stretches far, and silence often feels endless. But somewhere beneath the sand, water flows. Somewhere, someone is carrying a flame. Somewhere, the ember glows. The question is not whether the oasis exists, Thoth. The question is whether we will seek it, whether we will drink from it, whether we will become guardians ourselves. So I ask you, when the desert of forgetting surrounds you, when the world laughs at reverence, when silence presses heavy, will you turn away? Or will you bend down and keep the hidden spring alive? There is a moment in the prophecy when Hermes no longer speaks of ruins or deserts, but of a doorway, not carved of stone, not built by human hands, but a doorway woven of light and symbol. He described it as the threshold through which every seeker must pass if they truly wish to know. Each symbol, each teaching, each hidden word was never the end itself. It was a step leading closer to that door. To remain outside was to wander blind. To enter was to be transformed. The image is haunting. A doorway glowing faintly in the dark, waiting, open to all, yet invisible to most. Some pass by without noticing. Others sense it but are afraid to cross. Only those with courage, those willing to leave behind certainty and step into the unknown, dare to walk through. And Hermes tells us that beyond it lies the real work. Not merely knowledge, but transformation. Not merely memory, but renewal. The doorway was built of symbols, because symbols protect. They hide wisdom from those who would twist or misuse it, while revealing it to those ready to see. A serpent curled around itself, a staff crowned with wings, a triangle of fire, another of water, a circle without end. These are not decorations, they are keys, forming the frame of the threshold. To look at them without seeing is to remain outside. To see them as mirrors of the soul is to place your hand upon the door. The prophecy insists that the threshold is not found in distant temples or secret societies alone. It is everywhere. Every moment of silence, every fragment of memory, every question that stirs in the heart each is a threshold. To enter is not to leave the world, but to see it differently. The stars above, the rivers below, the flame within all speak in the same voice, if we learn to listen. This is the meaning of as above, so below. The doorway is both cosmic and personal, vast as the heavens, intimate as the breath. Imagine standing before such a door. You do not know what lies beyond. All you know is that to step through is to change. To cross is to leave behind the numbness of forgetting and awaken to the fire hidden in silence. That is why Hermes placed the threshold in his prophecy not as a threat, but as an invitation. To those who dare, the silence of the gods becomes the song of the soul. But Hermes also warned that the doorway is not forced. It cannot be pried open with intellect or stormed with ambition. It opens only to those who approach with reverence, with humility, with readiness. The work is not in finding the door. The work is in preparing oneself to step through it. Every act of remembrance, every moment of wonder, every time we choose silence over noise is a step closer. This is why seekers through the centuries guarded his words so carefully. They knew the symbols were not puzzles to solve, but invitations to transformation. To study them was not to master knowledge, but to be mastered by wisdom. To carry them was not to own secrets, but to be carried toward the threshold. The door does not belong to us. We belong to it. Think of it, a doorway of light, standing in the middle of a desert of forgetting. All around, silence. All around, mockery. But there, glowing faintly, the passage into renewal. How many will see it? How many will walk past, distracted by shadows? How many will laugh, never realizing they stand inches from transformation? And how many will pause, breathe, and dare to step forward? Hermes leaves us with this choice. The prophecy is not only about decline, but about decision. To remain outside is to accept silence as final. To cross the threshold is to discover that silence was always the prelude to song. The door waits. It has always waited. It will always wait. The only question is whether we will walk through. Perhaps even now, as you listen, you sense it. A quiet opening in the heart. A faint glow in the dark. That is the threshold Hermes spoke of. That is the prophecy alive in you. Do you dare to step closer? Do you dare to enter? Time, Hermes whispered, is not a straight line but a wheel. It does not rush endlessly forward toward an end. It turns, it circles, it returns. Civilizations, like seasons, bloom and wither, fall into silence and rise again. Just as winter strips the earth bare only so spring may flourish, so too do ages of darkness prepare the ground for renewal. This was the heart of his teaching, that decline is not final, and endings are only transformations in disguise. Hermes described time as the greatest alchemist. Just as fire refines metal, so does time refine the soul of humanity. Empires rise like sparks, blaze for a moment, and then collapse into ash. Yet from those ashes, something new emerges. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is lost. Even the silence of the gods, even the deserts of forgetting, are part of the furnace. They strip away what is false, leaving only what is true to endure. Imagine a river flowing endlessly. It carries away ruins, washing temples into dust. But it also brings fertile soil downstream, giving birth to new fields, new forests, new sanctuaries. This is time's alchemy, destruction and creation, inseparable, moving together like shadow and light. To fear one without the other is to miss the pattern. To trust both is to begin to see the rhythm of the cosmos. The prophecy said that even despair has purpose, even silence is sacred. For silence teaches us to listen again. For every mockery that poisons truth, a longing awakens deeper within. For every ruin that breaks the heart, a seed is planted in the soul. Time itself polishes us, like stones in the current, until we are smooth, until we shine. This is why Hermes did not shy away from opposites. He saw that all things exist in pairs, in mirrors, light and dark, fire and water, life and death. Each gives the other meaning. Without shadow, light is blinding. Without death, life is shallow. Without forgetting, remembrance is weak. In the alchemy of time, these opposites are not enemies but partners in the dance of becoming. He wrote of ages, vast and turning, an age of wisdom followed by an age of decline, an age of silence followed by an age of awakening. To see only one age is to despair. To see the wheel is to find hope. For what is lost now is not gone, it waits to return in another form. Just as dawn follows night, remembrance follows forgetting. The rhythm is eternal. Think of civilizations forgotten, buried in sand or swallowed by jungle. To the careless eye, they are only ruins. But to Hermes, they are not dead. They are sleeping. Their wisdom has not vanished, but has flowed forward, hidden, waiting to surface again in another land, another time. This is why he urged us to trust the wheel of time. What disappears today returns tomorrow. What fades in silence blooms again in song. For Hermes, the alchemy of time was not only cosmic but personal. Each life, too, follows this rhythm. We are broken, we are tested, we are burned in the furnace of suffering. And yet each wound refines us, each loss shapes us. The soul, like metal, emerges brighter after fire. To see this is to no longer curse time, but to bow to it, knowing that every moment, even in sorrow, is part of the great work. This is the hidden meaning of prophecy. It is not a doom carved in stone, but a reminder that decline is only half the story. The silence of the gods is not abandonment, it is preparation. The closing of the heavens is not rejection, it is waiting. And time itself is the proof. For everything sacred that has been lost will one day rise again, reshaped, renewed, refined. Picture the wheel, turning slowly, endlessly. Civilizations cling to its rim, rising into glory, falling into shadow, only to rise again. The wheel does not stop. The wheel does not fail. It carries us through darkness. It carries us through dawn. This is the comfort Hermes gave us, that the river flows, the wheel turns, the fire refines, and nothing sacred is ever truly lost. So let us ask ourselves, when time burns us, when silence stretches long, when what we love falls away, will we see only destruction? Or will we trust the wheel, the furnace, the river? Will we despair? Or will we recognize that every ending carries the seed of beginning? In the turning of ages, Hermes said, wisdom is never truly destroyed, is hidden. Like a flame sheltered underground, it burns quietly, unseen, waiting for breath to carry it forward. The prophecy is not only about silence and dawn, decline and renewal. It is also about memory itself, how it is carried, how it survives, how it waits. The esoteric heritage, born of whispers and symbols, did not vanish when temples fell. It passed invisibly through time, clothed in secrecy, kept alive by those who dared to remember. Hermes himself became a symbol of this hidden legacy. To the Greeks, he was a messenger between worlds. To the Egyptians, he was Thoth, the recorder of truth. When their images merged, Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great, was born, a figure too vast for one culture alone. His words became the Hermetica, fragile scrolls filled with visions of stars and spirit, of silence and return. Scholars copied them, mystics hid them, alchemists treasured them. Even when forgotten by the many, they survived through the few. In monasteries, they were guarded as if they were dangerous fire. In secret societies, they were passed like treasure, each symbol explained only to those prepared to understand. In alchemical laboratories, the words "as above, so below" were whispered like incantations, guiding experiments that were less about metals than about souls. In every age, seekers found Hermes again, each time reshaping him to fit their world, each time discovering the same river of wisdom flowing beneath. The prophecy was not only written, it was lived. Every seeker who guarded the flame became part of it. Every failure to understand, every partial glimpse, every misinterpretation still carried the light forward. For Hermes's wisdom was not meant to be owned, it was meant to travel. Like a seed carried by wind, it found new soil again and again, sometimes sprouting, sometimes waiting, always alive. Think of a medieval monk copying a manuscript by the dim glow of a candle. He does not know that centuries later, another will read these words and feel the same awe. He does not know that the ink he places on parchment tonight will be the ember that keeps Hermes' prophecy alive for a stranger he will never meet. Yet still, he writes. This is how memory survives, not through power, but through persistence. Hermes seemed to know that truth cannot be silenced forever. Empires may burn libraries, rulers may banish teachings, time may bury ruins under sand, but memory is stubborn. It hides in corners, it whispers in symbols, it lingers in the hearts of those who cannot forget. This is why Hermes' voice still reaches us now, because someone, somewhere, always chose to remember. And what of us? Do we not stand in the same line? Every time we remember, every time we share, we join the chain. We become another link in the endless passage of flame. The prophecy is alive because it is carried by Uznot, by temples, not by monuments, but by seekers willing to keep it breathing. The image Hermes left us is this: memory as a hidden spark. It may grow dim, buried under centuries of dust. It may seem gone, yet the spark is never extinguished. At the right time, with the right breath, it bursts into flame again, and from that flame, the world is renewed. So when you hear his words, fragile and ancient, know that you are not only a listener, you are part of the prophecy itself. By holding the story in your mind, by letting it move your heart, you are keeping the spark alive. And by sharing it, you pass the flame forward, ensuring it does not vanish in silence. For this is the greatest mystery Hermes left us. That prophecy is not finished. It continues in every act of remembrance. It continues in us. The flame is in your hands now, as it was once in the hands of scribes, mystics, alchemists, monks. The same spark, carried across centuries, asking the same question: will you keep it burning? So let us ask, when silence presses, when forgetting seems inevitable, when the flame looks small, will you hide it, or will you pass it on? At the end of the prophecy, Hermes does not leave us with despair. He does not leave us with silence, nor with ruins. He leaves us with a question, and in that question lies hope. For prophecy, he knew, is never about fixed fate. It is about the choices we make when we see ourselves reflected in the mirror of time. He spoke of forgetting, but also of remembering. He spoke of silence, but also of song. He showed us temples broken, but also altars glowing again, not in stone, but in the human heart. He told us that time refines, that memory survives, that even the deepest night waits for dawn. And so his final vision was not of abandonment, but of return. Not of gods leaving forever, but of gods who withdraw until we are ready, until we call, until we remember. The prophecy whispered that the heavens themselves might close like a great gate, yet Hermes assured us that the gate is not locked. It is waiting, ready to open when we choose. When hearts awaken, when memory stirs, when seekers rise, the silence will break. The divine breath will return. The song of the universe will rise once more. This, he promised, is written into the rhythm of creation itself. He asked us not to see forgetting as the final word. Forgetting is heavy, yes, but it is never final. Beneath it, memory sleeps. Beneath silence, song rests. Beneath ruins, seeds wait. To remember is to awaken. To awaken is to see the world alive again. To awaken is to see stars not as cold dots, but as voices. To see rivers not as water, but as song. To see yourself not as flesh alone, but as flame. This is the invitation Hermes left us, to become seekers, to step through the threshold, to trust the alchemy of time, to guard the flame of memory, not only for ourselves, but for the generations yet to come. His prophecy was not about one moment long ago. It was about every age, every life, every silence, every dawn. It is alive now, waiting for us to choose whether we will keep the fire or let it die. So let us slow here. Let us breathe in the weight of these words. The world feels heavy at times. Silence presses, forgetting spreads. And yet even now the ember glows. Even now, seekers rise. Even now, the prophecy breathes in us. You and I, by remembering, by listening, by holding this flame, are part of the story. The prophecy is not finished. It continues in us. Close your eyes. Imagine a long night, stars above, silence pressing. Then imagine the horizon softening, the first faint glow, the slow return of color. The whisper that light was never gone, only hidden. That is the dawn Hermes promised. That is the dawn waiting even now. So what will we choose? Will we live as though the sacred never existed, as though the silence is final? Or will we remember? Will we carry the flame forward, passing it from hand to hand, heart to heart? If these words stir you, even faintly, then you already carry the ember. Guard it, share it, keep it alive. For in doing so, you become part of the renewal Hermes foresaw. You become a keeper of the prophecy, a bearer of light in the long night. And so I ask you one last time, will you keep the flame alive? Will you pass it forward so that dawn may rise again?